Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Coming up on today's show, as Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivers her first spring statement, we take a closer look at the fine print behind the headlines. With hundreds of millions of pounds in welfare cuts, tighter eligibility for disability support and a renewed push on affordable housing, this statement is already stirring political and public debate. We'll be hearing from our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey, who's been tracking the government's fiscal strategy, the internal tensions within the Labour Party and the broader implications for households across the UK. And as Nigeria deepens its effort to attract diaspora investment, I caught up with Chief Bimbo Roberts Folayan, founder and convener of the Nigerian Diaspora Direct Investment Summit. Fresh from the 12th edition of the summit in London, we discussed the tangible outcomes from this year's event, including a landmark MOU with Bauchi State, efforts to mobilise funding for MSMEs, and why diaspora engagement is more crucial than ever. Then later, I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. But first, the UK Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Jonathan Reynolds, has been in Washington this week for talks with senior US officials as Britain seeks an exemption from recently reimposed tariffs on steel and aluminium exports. The 25% levy, revived under President Donald Trump, has sparked concerns across the steel industry, which exported nearly £225 million worth of steel to the US last year. Industry leaders have warned the levies could significantly impact jobs and competitiveness. Reynolds is expected to meet with the US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Trade Representative Jameson Greer. He's also using the visit to push for broader economic partnership with potential agreements in emerging sectors like AI and clean technology. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has so far ruled out immediate retaliation, but has said that all options remain on the table if progress is not made. In the UK, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has delivered her first spring statement, setting out a tough fiscal blueprint aimed at restoring economic stability while keeping public spending in check. Among the headline measures, hundreds of millions of pounds in fresh welfare cuts, including a freeze on new incapacity benefit claims until 2030 and tighter eligibility for disability support. The government says the reforms are necessary to encourage employment and reduce long-term welfare dependency. At the same time, Reeves reaffirmed a £2.2 billion boost to defence spending and unveiled a £2 billion investment in affordable housing, pledging the construction of 18,000 new homes as part of Labour's target to build 1.5 million homes during this Parliament. The Chancellor warned that sluggish economic growth and high interest payments have left little fiscal room, with the Office for Budget Responsibility projecting a sharp fall in the government's available headroom compared to last year. While business groups welcome the clarity, some Labour MPs have voiced concern over the scale of the welfare changes, signalling potential tensions within the governing party. Reeves said the statement reflects, in her words, tough choices made in the interest of long-term economic security.
We now come to the spring statement. Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves.
Mr. Speaker, this Labour government was elected to bring change to our country, to provide security for working people and to deliver a decade of national renewal. That work began in July, and I am proud of what we have delivered in just 9 months. Restoring stability to our public finances, giving the Bank of England the foundation to cut interest rates 3 times since the general election, rebuilding our public services with record investment in our NHS, bringing waiting lists down for 5 months in a row, and increasing the national living wage to give 3 million people a pay rise from next week. Now our task is to secure Britain's future in a world that is changing before our eyes. The threat facing our continent was transformed when Putin invaded Ukraine. It has since escalated further and will continue to evolve rapidly. At the same time, the global economy has become more uncertain, bringing insecurity at home as trading patterns become more unstable and borrowing costs rise for many major economies. Mr. Speaker, the job of a responsible government is not simply to watch this change. This moment demands an active government, a government not stepping back, but stepping up. A government on the side of working people, helping Britain to reach its potential. And Mr. Speaker, we have the strength to do just that. As one of the world's largest economies, an ally to trading partners across the globe, and a hub for global innovation. These strengths and the progress that we have made so far mean that we can act quickly and decisively in a more uncertain world to secure Britain's future and to deliver prosperity for working people. Mr. Speaker, as I set out at the budget last year, I am today returning to the House to provide an update on our public finances, supported by a new forecast from the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility. Ahead of a full spending review in June, I will then return to the House in the autumn to deliver a budget in line with our commitment to deliver just one major fiscal event a year. So let me now turn to the OBR's forecasts. And I want to thank Richard Hughes and his team for their dedicated work. The increased global uncertainty has had two consequences. First, on our public finances, and second, on our economy. I will take each in turn. In the autumn, I set out our new fiscal rules that would guide this government. These fiscal rules are non-negotiable. They are the embodiment of this government's unwavering commitment to bring stability to our economy and to ensure security for working people. Because the British people have seen what happens when a government borrows beyond their means. The mini-budget delivered by the party opposite resulted in higher bills, in higher rents and higher mortgages. And Mr. Speaker, it was not the wealthy who suffered most when they crushed the economy. It was ordinary working people. And they continue to feel the effects 2.5 years later of the damage that the party opposite did. Now let me be clear. There is nothing progressive, there is nothing Labour about working people paying the price for economic irresponsibility. The British people put their trust in this Labour government because they knew that I would never take risks with the public finances, that we would never do anything to put household finances in danger, and we must earn that trust every single day. The two rules that I set out at the budget were first, our stability rule, which ensures that public spending is under control, balancing the current budget by 2029-30, so that day-to-day spending is met by tax receipts. Second, our investment rule, to drive growth in the economy, ensuring that net financial debt falls by the end of the forecast period, while enabling us to invest alongside business. Turning first to the stability rule, the OBR's forecast shows that before the steps that I will take in this statement, the current budget would have been in deficit by £4.1 billion in 2029-30, having been in surplus by £9.9 billion in the autumn, as the UK, alongside our international peers like France and Germany, has seen the cost of borrowing rise during this period of heightened uncertainty in global markets. As a result of the steps that I am taking today, I can confirm that I have restored in full our headroom against the stability rule, moving from a deficit of £36.1 billion in 2025-26 and £13.4 billion in 2026-27 to a surplus of £6.0 billion in 27-28, £7.1 billion in 2028-29, and a surplus of £9.9 billion in 2029-30. That compares to the headroom left by the previous government of just £6.5 billion. That means we are continuing to meet the stability rule 2 years early, building resilience to shocks in this, a more uncertain world.
Well, for more on this, I was earlier joined by our Downing Street correspondent, Simon Pusey. Well, Simon, in years past, a spring statement has never been a big fiscal announcement, but considering that growth is just so sluggish at the moment, all eyes were on the Palace of Westminster. What were some of the big key announcements by Rachel Reeves?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you can hear in the background quite a lot of noise, and that's Jeremy Corbyn on a microphone talking about this, what isn't billed as a fiscal event, because Rachel Reeves said there'd only be one, and that's the budget, and today's not the budget, it's a spring statement, but it does feel like that, doesn't it? I think the main sort of, the big news was a growth forecast of 2% being cut to 1%, cut in half. That is not what the Labour Party wanted. The Labour Party have been banging on about growth for months, if not years, and talking about that's their way to economic prosperity. So that's been halved by 1%. They've also had to find quite a lot of money, which has come often from welfare. So that's why Jeremy Corbyn is up on a microphone now talking about how this is a disgrace. He's obviously running as an independent. He's not in the Labour Party anymore. And I think we've talked about how Labour don't seem to be Labour at the moment. They seem more Conservative than Labour. I was listening to an interview with Jeremy Hunt, the former Conservative Chancellor, talking in sort of gleeful terms about how it's weird not being the nasty party anymore, because the Conservatives traditionally are the ones that take welfare claimants. So that's been another big announcement today, is that welfare's been hit again.
How did she justify it?
She keeps saying that the big phrase today was that we're in a changing world, saying that we're in a changing world. Now you can read that in so many different ways, so it's kind of the perfect statement. I think one way you could look at it is that Donald Trump's in the White House and they're trying to align themselves with Donald Trump. The OBR have said that over the long term we're going to lose 15% of trade as a result of Brexit. That's something that no one is talking about. That is the big elephant in the room. Especially if you walk around here, there are lots of placards and signs saying we need to talk about Brexit. Where we're losing 15% according to the OBR in the long term, we need to fill that gap somehow. So Rachel Reeves, Sir Keir Starmer obviously trying to align themselves with the US, especially after Donald Trump in recent days, weeks, was talking about a trade deal with the US. That would be an absolute dream scenario if it were to work for the UK. But at the moment, there is a trade gap, and our growth forecasts are down. The inflation is up compared to what the predictions were. That's again been changed. So since the Conservatives came in, actually inflation's gone up. So things are not rosy for the Labour Party.
Things are not rosy. You spoke about the elephant in the room. Another elephant in the room is surely under Rachel Reeves there has been no growth. It's just gone horribly wrong. Is she able to concede? Is it the concession, or is it geopolitics, or is it the fact that they just got their numbers wrong?
I think it's probably a combination of all three of those things. You can't really account for what Donald Trump's doing in the White House and tariffs. You can't really account for what Vladimir Putin's doing in the war.
Couldn't account for COVID, but the Labour Party were constantly on the
Exactly,
back.
and now the pressure is on them, right? The boot's on the other foot. So I think she's made a rod for her own back in terms of having so little leeway with the money. But there's different ways that you could do it, and a lot of people are saying tax wealth. It's incredibly difficult to tax the rich. We know that over a long time. Because, I mean, the rich will always find ways out. And also, you can always, if there's a big headline announcement that a bank is moving to another country, that's very embarrassing for you because you want growth and you want, more tax money coming in revenues. So I think there's a number of things at play here, but I think definitely, world events is one of them. Rachel Reeves' own fiscal rules and her own straitjacket that she's put on herself is another. And then you could also look back to her budget, right? The budget that a lot of people, the Conservatives, have been pointing to today, saying you have done all of this yourself. This is a result of you putting on extra pressures to workforce, you're taxing jobs. And just in the last few days, we've heard, Tesco's, Morrison's, you're going to be losing jobs. And that is not the headlines that Labour want. Labour want to be a jobs creator and a wealth creator. One thing that they're pointing to is that they are cutting planning laws. Now, these planning laws will take a while to have an impact, but specifically around house building. That's the area of the economy that they think they're going to get most growth.
That boosts manufacturing.
Exactly. And it's also something that we need. We need more houses in the UK. They were saying Conservatives took too long to do that. That's it. No, but I mean, that is a good point. You want affordable housing, and that hasn't been going in the right direction for many years. But that's going to take a while to come into effect. Cutting those sort of planning laws will take a while.
Coming up on Channel's Business Global, as Nigeria deepens its efforts to to attract diaspora investment, I caught up with Chief Bimbo Roberts-Folayan, founder and convener of the Nigerian Diaspora Direct Investment Summit. Fresh from the 12th edition of the summit in London, we discuss the tangible outcomes from this year's event, including a landmark MOU with Bauchi State, efforts to mobilise funding for MSMEs, and why diaspora engagement is more crucial than ever. And I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. In a moment, I'll be showing highlights from a discussion I had with Chief Bimbo Roberts-Folayan. But until then, here's a breakdown of some of the biggest business news stories of the week. London's Heathrow Airport is back to full operation following a fire at North Hyde Electrical Substation, which triggered a major power outage. The disruption led to the cancellation or rerouting of over 1,300 flights, affecting nearly 290,000 passengers and causing estimated economic losses exceeding £100 million, including airline compensation, lost tourism revenue and freight delays. Power has now been fully restored, but Heathrow officials are pressing for infrastructure upgrades to avoid further incidents. A formal investigation is underway to determine the fire's cause, with regulators expected to review contingency planning across UK airports. Australian Treasurer Jim Chalmers unveiled its 2025 federal budget overnight, with a focus on easing household pressures and laying foundations for long-term economic resilience. Key measures include a $538 million annual tax cut for average workers starting mid-2027, expanded funding for Medicare and major investment in clean energy and housing. Chalmers said the budget aimed to ease the squeeze on families while strengthening future productivity and supply chains. Critics, however, questioned the timing of some long-term reforms and warned of potential shortfalls in revenue projections if global growth slows. Hyundai has announced a sweeping $21 billion investment across its US operations over the next decade, covering electric vehicles, batteries and AI-led manufacturing. The move comes as President Donald Trump signals fresh automotive tariffs targeting foreign automakers, prompting firms to localize production. The investment includes expansion of Hyundai's Georgia EV plant and a new research hub focused on autonomous driving. The company said it's committed to building smart mobility ecosystems while mitigating geopolitical risk. And now to my final topic. In London, diaspora-led investment in Nigeria took centre stage as policymakers, entrepreneurs and investors gathered for the 12th edition of the Nigerian Diaspora Direct Investment Summit. Held under the theme Empowering Nigeria Through Job Creation, Mentorship and Investment, the summit focused on unlocking opportunities within Nigeria's MSME sector. Key agreements were reached, including a landmark memorandum and understanding between the Bauchi State Government and NDDIS, designating the summit as its official project mobilisation partner. Delegations from Katsina State, federal agencies and prominent business leaders were also in attendance.
It's a huge delight to welcome you here again. This is our 12th NDDIS conference. Can I ask you first of all to please give a round of applause for the success of this event over the past 4 years.
So the reason we do it is just to create a platform. So we're not financial experts. We don't know much about finances. But what we do is to create a marketplace where people can come together. We can discuss our businesses. You can bring your small, medium enterprises and talk to other people and turn a small business turn a micro business into small. And then if you talk to more people, you turn a small business into medium. And who knows, if we small, medium start to talk together, we could actually produce it.
So what made this particular year unique is that we managed to get the president's special advisor on job creation and promotion of MSMEs, Mr. Temitola Johnson, to attend the event. He actually got us to put this particular one together to focus on job creation. So this particular one is actually focused on supporting Nigerian diaspora businesses to come back to Nigeria and create their branches, set up their branches, and then create jobs. So that's the major importance of it. We also managed to get the Bank of Industry. We got the Bank of Industry, we got Industrial Training Fund involved as well. We then got Bauchi State, as well as Katsina State to be involved in the summit of this year. But the highlight of this particular event is that we brought in funders. So there's a philanthropic funder who came in with a package of funding for projects that range between 1 million USD up to 500 million USD that will be given to projects that meet up with United Nations SDG goals. The Nigerian Diaspora Direct Investment Summit was set up in 2013 just to mobilize the diaspora to invest back into their country. We felt that if other people are going back to Nigeria and and doing business, good business, why can't Nigerians who live abroad, who have lived there for decades, why can't they also create branches of their businesses back in Nigeria? But not just that, we feel that the amount of remittances back to Nigeria far outweighs foreign direct investments. In every year, if you look at the statistics, every single year you find that diasporans remit so much money back into Nigeria that is almost double foreign direct investment. So what we set NDDIS up for was to support these diasporans to actually channel their instead of remitting funds to their brothers and parents, for social activities. Why not create jobs? Why not create businesses that create jobs back in Nigeria? The highlights of this particular summit was that we managed to get Bauchi State government for the very first time since we started. We got a state government in Nigeria to sign an MOU with the diaspora to actually work for Bauchi State. So we're really excited. It was a very exciting event. Since we had that event, during the event, actually, a lot of discussions were ongoing in the deal rooms with Bauchi State, with Katsina State, with Industrial Training Fund, with Bank of Industry. They were right in the background having meetings with project owners, also now having meetings with funders. So we had two major funders in the room. One was representing some philanthropic funders. The other one was representing another agency in the UK. And they came in with packages saying that if you give us projects, particularly social projects that impact society, we will provide the funding to you. So these are some of the highlights of that meeting. So we also seized the opportunity to invite people from the AI digital sector. We had projects from agricultural sector. We have different projects at the last summit. In fact, a Nigerian who relocated from the diaspora and who has now recruited over 1,000 staff in Nigeria, created over 1,000 jobs, was at the summit and also came to the UK to create franchise. So that's a highlight. So potentially now, we're likely going to be having diasporans who are connecting with these businesses and then setting up their own businesses back in Nigeria.
Well, sadly, that's all we've got time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channels Business Global. Goodbye.